Adrenocortical hormones are derived from cholesterol. Adrenocortical hormones are derived from cortisol. Adrenocortical hormones, all steroid hormones, including those produced by the adrenal cortex, are synthesized from the cholesterol. Are synthesized from cholesterol. Adrenocortical hormones, cholesterol. Although the cells of the adrenal cortex can synthesize de novo small amounts of cholesterol from acetate. Cells of adrenals from acetate. Approximately 80% of the cholesterol used for synthesis is provided by low-density lipoproteins in the circulating plasma. Although the cells of the adrenal cortex can synthesize de novo small amounts of cholesterol from acetate, approximately 80% of the cholesterol used for steroid synthesis is provided by low-density lipoprotein in circulating blood. In circulating Although the cells of the adrenal cortex can synthesize de novo small amounts of cholesterol from acetate, approximately 80% of the cholesterol used for steroid synthesis is provided by low-density lipoproteins in the circulating plasma. Adrenocortical hormones, cholesterol from adrenocortical hormones from cholesterol, adrenocortical hormones, cholesterol from acetate, low density lipoproteins, the LDLs, which have high concentration of cholesterol, diffuse from the plasma into the interstitial fluid. The LDLs, which have high concentration of cholesterol, diffuse from the plasma into the LDLs, which have high concentration of cholesterol, diffuse from the plasma into the interstitial fluid and attach to the specific receptors in structures called corticosteroids on the adrenocortical cell membrane. The LDLs, which have high concentration of cholesterol, diffuse from plasma into the interstitial fluid and attach to specific receptors contained in structures called corticosteroids on the cortical cell membranes. The LDLs, which have high concentration of cholesterol, diffuse from the plasma into the interstitial fluid and attach to specific receptors contained in structures called corticosteroids on the adrenocortical cell membranes. The LDLs, which have high concentration of cholesterol, diffuse from plasma into the interstitial fluid and attach to specific receptors contained in structures called corticosteroids on the corticosteroids on the adrenocortical cell membranes. The adrenocortical hormones, cholesterol from acetate, low density lipoprotein diffuse from the low density lipoprotein diffuse from plasma into the interstitial fluid specific structures called corticosteroids on the adrenocortical cell membrane. The corticosteroids are then internalized by endocytosis, forming vesicles that the corticosteroids are then internalized by endocytosis, forming vesicles that eventually fuse with lysosomes and release cholesterol that can be used to synthesize adrenal steroid hormones. The corticosteroids are then internalized by endocytosis from vesicles that eventually fuse with the cell lysosomes and release cholesterol that can be used to synthesize adrenal steroid hormones. The corticosteroids are then internalized by endocytosis, forming vesicles that eventually fuse with the cell lysosomes and release cholesterol that can be used to synthesize adrenal steroid hormones. Into the interstitial fluid and attach to specific receptor containing structures called corticosteroids on the adenocortical cell membrane. Corticosteroids on the adenocortical cell membrane. The coated pits are then internalized by endocytosis, forming vesicle. The coated pits are then internalized by endocytosis. Internalized by endocytosis. Internalized by endocytosis, forming vesicles that eventually fuse with cell lysosomes and release cholesterol that can be used to synthesize adrenal steroid hormone. Forming vesicles that can eventually fuse with the cell lysosomes and release cholesterol that can be used to synthesize adrenal corticosteroids hormone, adrenal steroid hormones and release cholesterol that can be used to synthesize adrenal cortical hormones. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Adenocortical hormones, cholesterol from acetate, low density low density lipoproteins, low density lipoprotein into the interstitial fluid through endocytosis, into the interstitial fluid, diffusion of plasma into the interstitial fluid. The specific structures contained in coated pits internalized by endocytosis. Endocytosis release cholesterol that can be used to synthesize adrenal steroid hormones. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Adrenal cortical hormones, cholesterol from acetate, low density lipoproteins diffuse into the low density lipoproteins. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Coated pits from interstitial fluid into the into the interstitial fluid. Coated pits internalized by endocytosis and release cholesterol. Internalized by endocytosis and release cholesterol that can be used to synthesize. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Adenocortical hormones. Adenocortical hormones. Adenocortical hormones from cholesterol from acetate. Cholesterol, low density lipoproteins from low density lipoproteins into the interstitial fluid contain specific structures called coated pits, which are on the adenocortical hormone. The coated pits are then internalized by endocytosis, forming vesicles that fuse with lysosomes and release cholesterol that can be used to synthesize adrenal steroid hormones. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Adenocortical hormones, cholesterol from acetate, low density lipoproteins diffuse into the interstitial fluid. Diffuse low density lipoprotein into the interstitial fluid. Coated pits on the adrenal cortical cell membrane. Coated pits are then internalized by endocytosis, forming vesicle that fuse with the coated pits are then internalized by vesicle, forming vesicle that eventually fuse with cell lysosomes and release vesicle and release cell lyso and release cell lyso with vesicle and release cell lysosomes, which eventually release cholesterol that can be used to synthesize adrenal corticosteroids. Transport of cholesterol into the adrenal cortex is regulated by feedback mechanism. Transport of cholesterol into the adrenal cell is regulated by feedback mechanism that can markedly alter amount available for steroid synthesis. Transport of cholesterol into the adrenal cells is regulated by feedback mechanisms that can markedly alter the amount available for steroid synthesis. Transport of cholesterol into the adrenal cells is regulated by feedback mechanism. Transport of cholesterol Transport of cholesterol into the adrenal cell is regulated by feedback mechanism that can markedly alter the amount available for steroid synthesis. Transport of cholesterol into the adrenal cell is regulated by feedback mechanism that can markedly alter the amount available for steroid synthesis that can markedly alter the amount available for steroid synthesis. For example, ACTH, which stimulates adrenal steroid synthesis, increases the number of adrenocortical cell receptor for LDL, as well as the activity of enzyme that liberate cholesterol from LDL. For example, ACTH, which stimulates the adrenal steroid synthesis, increases the number of adrenocortical cells receptor for LDL, as well as the activity of enzyme that liberate the cholesterol from the LDL. For example, ACTH, which stimulates adrenal steroids. For example, ACTH, which stimulates adrenal For example, ACTH, which stimulates adrenal steroid synthesis, increases the number of adrenocortical cells receptor for LDL, as well as the activity of enzyme that can liberate cholesterol from LDL. For example, ACTH, which stimulates adrenal steroid synthesis, increases the number of adrenocortical cell receptor for LDL, as well as the activity of enzyme that liberate cholesterol from LDL. Transport of cholesterol into the renal cortex is regulated. Transport is regulated by feedback mechanism that markedly alters the amount available for steroid synthesis. For example, ACTH, which stimulates adrenal steroid synthesis, increases the number of adrenocortical cell receptor for LDL, as well as the activity of enzyme that separate cholesterol from LDL. Transport of cholesterol into the adrenal cell is regulated by feedback mechanism that can markedly alter the amount available for steroid synthesis. For example, ACTH, which stimulates adrenal steroid synthesis. For example, ACTH, which stimulates adrenal steroid synthesis, increases the number of adrenocortical cell receptor for LDL, as well as the activity of enzyme that liberate cholesterol from LDL. For example, ACTH, which stimulates adrenal steroid synthesis, increases the number of adrenocortical receptor for LDL, as well as the activity of enzyme that liberate the cholesterol from LDL. Transport of cholesterol into the adrenal cell is regulated by feedback mechanism that can markedly alter the amount available for steroid synthesis. For example, ACTH, which stimulates the adrenal steroid synthesis, increases the number of adrenocortical cell receptors for LDL, as well as the activity of enzyme that separate cholesterol from LDL. For example, ACTH, which stimulates adrenal steroid synthesis. For example, ACTH, which stimulates adrenal steroid synthesis, increases the number of and increases the number of adrenal cortical cells receptor for LDL, as well as the activity of enzyme that liberate cholesterol from LDL. Transport of cholesterol into the adrenal cell is regulated by feedback mechanism that can markedly alter the transport of cholesterol into the adrenal cell is regulated by feedback. Transport of cholesterol into the adrenal cortex cell is regulated by feedback mechanism transport of cholesterol into the adrenal cell is regulated by feedback mechanism that can markedly alter the amount available for steroid synthesis. For example, ACTH, which stimulates adrenal steroid synthesis, increases the number of adrenal cortical cell receptor for LDL, as well as the activity of enzyme that liberate cholesterol from LDL. For example, ACTH, which stimulates adrenal steroid synthesis, increases the number of adrenocortical cell for receptors for LDL, as well as the activity of enzyme that liberate cholesterol from LDL. Increases the number of adrenocortical cell receptor for LDL, as well as the activity of enzyme that liberate cholesterol from LDL. Once cholesterol enters the cell, it is delivered to the mitochondria, which is cleaved by the enzyme cholesterol desmolase to form progenolone. Cholesterol desmolase to form progenolone. Progenolone. This is the rate limiting step. This is the rate limiting step this is the rate limiting step in the eventual formation of adrenal steroids. This is the rate limiting step in the eventual formation of adrenal steroids. Once cholesterol enters the cell, it is cleared by cholesterol cholesterol desmolase to form progenolone. This is the rate limiting step. This is in the eventual formation of adrenal steroids. In all three zones of adrenal cortex, this initial step is in all three zones of the um, in all three Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In all three zones, this is the rate limiting step in the eventual formation of adrenal steroids. In all three zones of the adrenal cortex, this initial step is in steroid synthesis is stimulated by different factors that control secretion of major hormone products, aldosterone and cortisol. In all three zones of adrenal cortex, this initial step in steroid synthesis is stimulated by different factors that control secretion of the major hormone products, aldosterone and cortisol. In all three zones of the adrenal cortex, this initial step is in the steroid synthesis is stimulated by different factors that control in all three zones of the adrenal cortex, this initial step is in steroid synthesis is stimulated by different factors that control secretion of the major hormone products, aldosterone and cortisol. For example, both ACTH, which stimulates cortisol secretion, and angiotensin II, which stimulates aldosterone secretion, it increases the conversion of cholesterol into progesterone. Conversion of cholesterol into progesterone. When cholesterol enters the cell, it is cleaved by the enzyme enters cholesterol desmolase progenolone. Initial step in steroid synthesis is stimulated by different factors that control secretion of the major products, aldosterone and cortisol. This is the initial in all three zones of the adrenal cortex. This initial step in steroid synthesis is stimulated by different factors that control secretion of major hormone products, aldosterone and cortisol. This initial step in steroid synthesis is stimulated by different factors that control secretion of the major products, aldosterone and cortisol. This initial step in steroid synthesis is stimulated by different factors that control secretion of major hormone products, aldosterone and cortisol. In this initial step in steroid synthesis is stimulated by different factors that control secretion of major hormone products, aldosterone and cortisol. This initial step in steroid synthesis is stimulated by different factors such as aldosterone that control the secretion of major hormone products, aldosterone and cortisol. This initial step in steroid synthesis is stimulated by different factors that control secretion of major hormone products, aldosterone and cortisol. This initial step in steroid synthesis is stimulated by different factors that control secretion of major hormone products, aldosterone and cortisol. This initial step in steroid synthesis is stimulated by different factors that control secretion of major hormone products, aldosterone and cortisol. This initial step in steroid synthesis is stimulated by different factors that control secretion of the major hormone products, aldosterone and cortisol. This initial step in steroid synthesis is stimulated by different factors that control secretion of major hormone products, cortisol and aldosterone. This initial step in steroid synthesis is stimulated by different factors that control secretion of major hormone products, aldosterone and cortisol. This initial step in steroid synthesis is controlled by is stimulated by different factors that control secretion of major hormone products, aldosterone and cortisol. For example, both ACTH will stimulate cortisol secretion, and angiotensin II, which stimulates aldosterone secretion, increases conversion of cholesterol to progenolone. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Cholesterol desmolase progenolone. Cholesterol desmolase progenolone. This is the initial step in steroid synthesis. This initial step in steroid synthesis is stimulated by different This initial step in steroid synthesis is stimulated by different factors such as initial step in steroid synthesis is stimulated by different factors that control secretion of major hormone. That control secretion of the major hormone products aldosterone and cortisol. Um, Conversion of cholesterol into progesterone, insulin, and this initial step in steroid synthesis is stimulated by different factors. The initial step in steroid synthesis is stimulated by different factors that control secretion of endocrine products or major hormone products or aldosterone and cortisol. This initial step in steroid synthesis is stimulated by different factors that control the secretion of major hormone products, aldosterone and cortisol. This initial step in steroid synthesis is stimulated by different hormone factors that control secretion of major endocrine other major hormone products, aldosterone and cortisol.